You walked into your boss office last year. You laid out all your achievements. You fought tooth and nail for a 5% raise. You got it. You probably went out to dinner, ordered a steak, and celebrated beating the system. Wait, actually, grab a calculator right now if you have one near you. Or just pull up your bank app and look at a grocery receipt from 2021. I need to show you the actual brutal math of that little celebration. Because while you were fighting for pennies in that office, the United States Treasury and the Federal Reserve were executing a mathematical extraction of your wealth. They don't call it an extraction. Obviously, they wrap it in sanitized academic terms like crisis management or liquidity injection. If you ask them, they have the perfect excuse ready to go. They will tell you to your face, listen, if we didn't inject trillions into the system, credit markets would have frozen overnight. We prevented a second Great Depression. We printed that money to save your job. Sounds heroic, right? Almost noble. But pull up the actual balance sheets. Look at where those trillions actually settled. The bottom 50% of Americans hold roughly 2% of the country's wealth. Yet you, the working class, are absorbing 100% of the impact of core inflation. The Federal Reserve didn't save the working economy. They bailed out the collateral of the asset-heavy elite, and they handed you the bill through a silent, invisible tax. That 5% raise you fought for. It was a 10% pay cut in real purchasing power. The $34 trillion national debt isn't being paid by foreign tariffs or by taxing billionaires. It is being paid by the systematic, calculated destruction of the American middle class. So I have to ask you right now, before we dig into the numbers, are you on the side of the Fed, believing they saved the economy? Or do you realize you were the sacrificial lamb? Drop your vote in the comments right now. Type Fed saved us or Fed robbed us, because you won't look at your paycheck the same way after this. Look at the narrative we have been spoon-fed since childhood. You work hard, you get your annual bump. You slowly climb the ladder, and you win. That is the American dream on paper. But there is a mechanical flaw built into the bedrock of our current system that makes it mathematically impossible for you to win. When a government runs a $34 trillion deficit, they only have a few options. They can't just default. That causes a global financial collapse. They also can't tax you directly to pay for it. Think about it. If they took 40% of your paycheck tomorrow morning to pay down the national debt, there would be riots in the streets by tomorrow night. So they do it quietly. They dilute the money supply. Look at a single $100 bill in your wallet for a second. Imagine holding it in your hands. Now, think about a pie. If I cut a pie into 8 slices and then suddenly slice it into 16, I didn't magically create more pie. I just made your individual slice smaller. Every single time the Treasury issues new bonds and the Fed prints cash to buy them, they are slicing your paycheck thinner and thinner. Your 5% raise isn't a reward for your hard work. It is an engineered illusion designed to keep you pacified, to keep you showing up to work, while the true cost of living surges by 15% around you. Look, I know this sounds incredibly cynical. Trust me. Even I wanted to believe it was just incompetence. It is honestly easier to sleep at night thinking the guys at the top just made a massive miscalculation. But then you actually read their policy paper. You read the Federal Reserve meeting minutes. The Treasury-Fed alliance isn't stupid. They are arguably the most sophisticated financial operators in human history. When confronted with this exact inflation crisis, their defense is polished to absolute perfection. They say, we had no choice. During the panic, credit markets were seizing up. If we didn't flood the zone with liquidity, millions of businesses would have missed payroll. We would be looking at 20% unemployment. We printed the money to save Main Street, and the terrifying part, people buy it. Because nobody wants a depression, but let's apply some basic forensic accounting to that heroic rescue mission. If the core objective was to save Main Street, where did the trillions actually go? Did that money land in your personal savings account? Did it go toward building new factories? Or upgrading local infrastructure? No. Actually stop what you're doing and visualize the flow of capital for a second. The liquidity blasted directly into equities, corporate bonds, and massive commercial real estate portfolios. The Fed artificially suppressed interest rates down to zero. Who benefits from 0% interest? It is not the guy with $5,000 sitting in a checking account. The entities that benefit are hedge funds, private equity firms, and mega corporations who can borrow billions of dollars for free to buy up hard assets. The bottom 50% of Americans own just around 2% of the wealth in this country. They don't own sprawling portfolios of commercial real estate. They don't have massive stock holdings to ride the wave. But they do buy groceries, they pay rent, they buy gas. So the working class gets exactly zero upside from the asset bubble. But they bear 100% of the brunt when that new, freshly printed money floods the consumer market and drives up prices. The Fed didn't save your job. They saved the collateral of the elite, and they used your future purchasing power to fund the bailout. This brings us to the uncomfortable truth that financial media refuses to touch. Inflation is not a tragic accident. It is not a byproduct of greedy supermarkets suddenly deciding to raise prices or unpredictable supply chain glitches. It is a deliberate, highly effective strategy to manage an unpayable national debt. When inflation runs at 7 or 8%, the real value of the government's debt shrinks by that exact same amount. They are paying off their old, massive debts with new, increasingly worthless dollars. It is a brilliant mathematical trick. But the money to pay down that debt doesn't just materialize out of thin air. It is siphoned directly out of your bank account. Hold on, Em. Looking at this IRS tax bracket adjustment from last year, and it is almost offensive when you really break it down. Because here is the final insult. The true inescapable double debt trap. Not only does inflation steal your purchasing power, making your groceries and rent untouchable, but when your boss gives you that pathetic 5% raise to help you out, your nominal income goes up on paper, which means the government legally pushes you into a higher tax bracket. You are losing your wealth to inflation on the front end, and then the government taxes you more heavily on the fake, inflated money you just earned on the back end. They win on the currency devaluation, and they win on the increased tax collection. You lose on both ends. The national debt isn't being paid by foreign nations. It is not being paid by billionaires hiding money offshore. It is being paid by the shrinking, bleeding American middle class. One grocery bill, one tank of gas at a time. So, I will ask you again, now that you've seen the math, go to the comments. Are you still defending the Fed? Did they save us, or did they rob us blind? Let me know down below. Subscribe if you want to see the real numbers behind the headlines. And I'll see you in the next breakdown.